In this tutorial, we are going to learn how to draw an automation for volume, panning, and muting. I have a session here with some panning data on the tambourine track, some volume change on the swirl pad, and a mute on and off on my delay effect. Let's hear a little bit of this, and we'll see how it looks on the mixing board as well. Notice the volume's gradually rising on the swirl pad. There's a mute on the delay that will turn off right here. And the panning on the tambourine, and listen for it too. Alright, so let's see how I got there. I'm going to take out all the existing data. I can do that by dragging across it and pressing the delete key, and it'll be gone. Bring that back up to where it was. And same with the mute. Okay, you also notice there's additional playlists below my main playlist, so that's where we want to start. If you want to add automation, you want to open a playlist below a track and choose the automation type. So for instance, the tambourine, I click on the playlist button here, and there's many values I can choose, and I chose panning. Then it's as simple as using the pencil tool to draw, or the grabber tool to make a point and move. So I'll start with the grabber tool, and I'm going to put a point here and a point here, and watch what happens when I click drag. Okay, that means my panning is all the way to one side. I could click here, let's say right about here, put a point in and another point, and now my panning is all the way to the other side. Let's zoom in on that. Now as I'm adding these points, you might notice that they're clicking to the grid. So I'm in grid mode, but I also have my pencil tool set up to grid. So if I go to slip, let's see if I can move them freely. Now I can move it freely, but you may want them to lock to the grid. So I'm going to leave it in grid mode. So I might put a point here and drag. Let's try what happens if I choose the pencil tool. If I click and hold the pencil tool, it shows me a shape. So I can actually draw automation in all these shapes. So let's try the straight line shape. I'll draw from here to there. Does essentially the same thing, like that. I can even choose the random function and draw over a range, and it's going crazy, and I let go, and it sort of generates its own data. This is especially effective for opening and closing filters, things like that. Okay, so now if I solo out my tambourine, we should hear some panning back and forth. Let's see. And there it's panning on the mixing board too. Alright, let's go next to the mute and unmute. On my delay track, I have a digital delay sound that is being triggered by the percussion sounds here. So I have an effects auxiliary track that's receiving these notes and putting a delay on it. This is what it sounds like from the beginning if the delay is on. Actually, the delay is off now. Okay. Hear this little echo in the snare drum and the bass drum. Well, that's going to be cool later, but I want to have it dry for the first few measures. So I can automate the mute on and off. Same way. Open a playlist, make sure that mute is selected, and I want it to be on at the beginning. So it's in the, I want muting to be on, which means it's muted at the beginning, but I want it to turn off at full drum. So I'm going to pull this down to muted. Zoom in, it's a little easier. Choose my grabber tool, pull this down to muted. You saw the mute button turn on. And if I go to this next spot, here is where I want it to be unmuted. So I simply click on here and drag up. And I'm on the grid, so the mute and unmute are snapping to the grid. So if I scroll back a little bit and play from here, we should hear no echo on the drums, but we'll hear it kick in at the full drum section. that stereo echo effect. Lastly, let's add volume to my swirl pad. Same deal. If you're using an instrument track, you'll see MIDI controls and audio controls. The MIDI controls send MIDI instructions and actually have a lower resolution than audio controls. So audio volume is most appropriate here. So I'm going to choose that. And let's try the pencil tool and use the line. Then I can very easily draw in from here, like that. I've drawn in basically a crescendo. Now let's hear all of this together. Here's the pad sneaking in. And it matches exactly with the fader. And our tambourine should be doing panning, and we're unmuted on the delay. Alright, so that's drawing in automation. You can also record automation in. It's a little more complicated, the options, actually. So I'll just show you the basic option. Let's say you wanted to record the bass track getting louder and softer for whatever reason. You wouldn't hit the record button. What that would do is erase the MIDI data. You don't want that. What you want to do is go to the automation button and choose to record. There's many modes which I'll discuss in class. In Music 10 we go over in more detail. So I'll go to touch mode and I'll go from the beginning. I don't need to press record here either. Definitely don't press record. You just press play. And as soon as I touch this, you notice it turned red. Going up and down, and I release. Goes back to its original spot. And then I can go back to read mode. By the way, read mode enables the automation. It's on by default. It automatically reads automation. If you want it to ignore the automation data and just stay all these settings, panning, volume stay the same, turn auto off. Okay, let's see if I drew something. If we go to my bass track, open a playlist, and click on audio volume. There we see a squiggly line. That is actually what I drew as I was dragging the fader up and down. So if I press play, we see the bass fader moving up and down here, matching the curve in the track.